talk about the growing disconnect between the ruling elite and the rest of us. That can be evidenced by what happened last week. The British Army chiefs said they don't have enough troops, not enough to fill Wembley Stadium. So he's talking about conscription. And he said, we need conscription to fight a war against Russia. Now, that's complete nonsense. Yes. Now, most of our politicians seem to know very little about the causes of the Ukraine-Russia war. That's a topic for another discussion. But they subscribe to the theory that Russia intends to take over Ukraine, which is nonsense. And once the theory goes, once they've done that, they'll attack Poland, and they'll capture that. Then they'll start on all the European countries. So after a few years, they'll be in a position to attack Britain. And as someone said to me, they'll be on the shores of France, and they'll be ready to come over in the boats and land on our shores. And I said, well, I said, we can't stop them. He said, yes, we can. We'll be there with our rifles and we'll say stop or we'll shoot. I said, no, you won't, for one reason. And all they have to do is utter the magic word, asylum. They say asylum, and then they'll say, okay, lads, put your weapons down. Let's escort them to the nearest hotel. And they'll give them a piece of paper, and they'll say, well, what is this? They'll say, just mark, it's tomorrow's menu. Just mark if you want tea or coffee or orange juice. Do you want brown bread or white bread for your toast? Do you want your eggs scrambled or not? I mean, that shows the absurdity of what we've got now. They lack the backbone to do anything. And it's not going to happen. Now, conscription, the reaction on social media has been swift. People were saying, it's not my war. What's it got to do with me? What's it got to do with this country? Some woman wrote, I've got 4 sons, and you'll take them over my dead body. Another one gave a good comment, why don't you use, if you want fit young men to be conscripted, use the boat people. And I'm sure they love this country so much, they'll welcome it. Now, they say, there's a saying, rich man's war, poor man's blood. So, another comment, the children and grandchildren of our MPs, they should be the first ones conscripted. Now, I say put them on the front line. So when they return in body bags, maybe the politicians will have a different view, talking about this nonsense of war. Now, wars are usually started by just a room full of people, usually politicians or even one person. And they just say, we'll go to war, oh, if we lose 500,000, then we'll have... No, let their sons and their and the daughters. Now, talking about the boat people, Rishi Sunak, he's given another 2 billion to Ukraine and more weapons. He says we have to give it to Ukraine to protect their borders. Now, we can't even protect our own borders, so that's ridiculous. Yeah. Now, legal immigration is even worse. Last year, I'm told, 750,000 people came, and he won't do anything about that.
That's just net.
That's net, okay, net. They will not do anything. They say that it makes us richer, but it hasn't made me richer. Has it made you richer? No. Has it enabled you to move from a 2-bedroom house to a 5-bedroom house? No. And on the topic of illegal immigration, he's putting forward his Rwanda plan. And I'm told that he's had advice from lawyers and judges to see if it works. And I'm told they've told him he's got a 50% chance of it succeeding. In other words, it might work or it might not work. I could have told him that.
So can I just interject?
Yes.
Sorry. I just read recently that they've accepted 4 Rwandans for asylum here, and it's been approved. this is recently,
Yeah,
because I did think
the
of
Raymond,
this. Yeah,
Raymond asylum.
So that's going to be grist for the...
But that's on purpose, so that they can throw that at the court. That was done on purpose.
Yeah, he wants to write it in law that Rwanda is a safe country, but
Yeah.
what's happened in the past, the judges have said it may be a safe country for most people, but for some people it's not. So that's easy to get around that. And what he should get his team of lawyers and judges to go through different cases and say, what happened? Why did they stop it? The same thing seems to come up. 1951 UN Refugee Convention, Section 31 of the Immigration Asylum Act. What he must do is repeal those, but he won't do it. He's got no backbone. And he keeps repeating the same phrase over and over. We must make sure we meet our international obligations. How about meeting the obligations to this country? Sunak and the others and the ruling elite, they regard the UK as just a piece of land. They've got no regard for ethnicity. That's why we have immigration. They don't care. I call it ethnic cleansing. Now, another example which shows the discontent between us and the ruling elite is the post office scandal. I don't know if you've seen it, ITV, Mr. Bates versus the post office. It's gripped the nation. The head of the post office at the time, Paula Venables, she was given a CBE for her services to the post office. It was an absolute disaster. Now, there was a growing, people said she should give up her CBE. Rishi Sunak should have gone to the forfeiture committee and said, I want you to consider taking it away from her. But she wouldn't. But they wouldn't. She wouldn't give it up. It took 1.2 million people signing an online petition before she gave it up. Now that's an example of people power. That's what we need in this country. Now the other person who was involved, he was the minister for the post office at the time, called Ed Davey. Sir Ed Davey, knighted for his services to the post office. He was in an interview on TV. He was asked about it. He refused to say sorry 10 times. And all he's saying was, well, I was told the Horizon computer system was working properly. And that's what he says. But we found out that he was told it was not working properly. Mr. Bates, who's leading this campaign for the sub-postmasters, he wrote to him 4 times and said, there's a problem with this system. People are going to jail, people are losing their homes, and some people have committed suicide. This computer system does not work. And he disregarded those letters. I think on the 5th time he did see him, and he just brushed him off. From what I hear, he was looking at the clocks. Yes, okay, that's it. So that got nowhere. So his attitude was very arrogant. And they keep relying on this. Well, we were told. Now, can you imagine the police investigating a murder? They've got eyewitnesses. The husband killed the wife. They suspect it was him. Eyewitnesses saw him going in the house, coming out with blood on him. They saw his car, DNA evidence. But when they interviewed the husband, he said, it wasn't me. And the police said, well, we're not investigating any further, because he said he didn't do it. They were told, and it's the same with Horizons, we were told they're supposed to investigate it, but they didn't. Now, the other thing about Ed Davey, we now know that he was a consultant to a law firm. He was getting paid £250,000 a year. It was a firm where his brother was a partner. That firm was hired by the post office to fight the sub-postmasters. So there's a definite conflict of interest. That's why he wouldn't listen to them, because he was being paid for a firm who wanted to attack, and they were quite ruthless. They threatened him with jail and all sorts of people, all sorts of actions. And he was given a knighthood for all this. So he's the Lib Dem leader. Now he got in where was it? Surbiton and not far from South London. Surbiton and Kingston, that's it. 51% he got in. That's 51%, and he won by 10,000 votes. The nearest one to him was Conservatives with 33%. It was a 78% turnout. Now, can you imagine, standing against him is a woman who was an ex-sub postmaster. Oh. I was going to say postmistress, but I might get arrested. She's going to stand on him. She wants to make it a one-issue election, which the politicians don't like. They don't like it. They asked her, what's your manifesto? What do you think about this? She said, I've got one aim, to get rid of Ed Davey. So she's going to stand. Now, can you imagine if Ed Davey lost that election? It would send shockwaves through the system. And it would definitely harm the Liberal Democrats if they could pull it off. But to do that, you would need something known as tactical voting. If the if a lot of Labour voters and Conservative voters voted for this woman, that might do it. And the people who didn't vote, if they voted on one issue, to get him out. I'm sure there are Lib Dem voters who are sick of him. He's just an embarrassment, I think. That's called tactical voting. And tactical voting may play a part in the London mayoral election. Now, Sadiq Khan, he's introduced ULEZ. It's called Ultra-Low Emission Zone in Outer London. He's facing a serious opposition to that. People are cutting down the cameras, and people have said to me, I voted Labour all my life, but at this election, I'm going to vote Conservative. I said, why? They said, because she's got the best chance of beating him. And she said she'll scrap it, day one. Well, that's called tactical voting. Now, enough people do it. There's great opposition to it. And many people said, I'm not going to vote for him. I said, what? I thought, oh, why don't you vote Conservative? I could never do that. I said, because what you've got to understand, the London mayoral election is not a general election. You're not voting for the government. You're voting on one issue. I call it ULEZ referendum day, 2nd of May. And that's what people are thinking. They're thinking, I'm forgetting my loyalties. I'm not voting for a government. I'm voting against him. And I'm voting for the candidate who's most likely to defeat him. Now that's something, it's like if you've played chess, you do a pawn sacrifice, or sacrifice any piece. You're sacrificing something, or your beliefs or something. You're sacrificing a piece in order to win the game overall. And I think that's good. What else is there? Yes. So I'm sick of these politicians telling us what to do, talking about ridiculous, we must fight for a war in Russia, Ed Davey, all these politicians. And when they had a debate, he was conspicuous by his absence. The House of Commons was packed. People wanted something to do about the post office. But he was absent. And he was the minister responsible for it. So we've got to teach these people a lesson. Now, talk a bit about boycotts. There was a boycott in America, and they say it was the most successful boycott they've ever had. I don't know if you know about it, Bud Light. It was the best-selling beer in America, and they had a bright idea, well, we've got to attract younger viewers. So they got someone from the marketing department, new, and she thought it would be a great idea to have their bottles and cans of beer with a rainbow flag, supporting LGBT+. And they got a trans woman on the TV advert who definitely looked like a trans woman, and she said, I drink Bud Light. Now, the people who drink it were upset by this. They said, I hate that. I don't like it. It's not me. Ugh. And so they decided to have a boycott. They stopped drinking that beer, didn't buy it. They found alternatives. Now, the company, I think they're Anheuser-Busch, if that's the word, they thought it'll go the way of all boycotts. It'll just peter out. Yes, they'll make some noise, but it didn't. It got worse and worse. And people were boycotting stores who sold it, boycotting bars that sold it, and it's not the number one beer. And they estimate they've lost hundreds of millions in sales. Some say it's over $1 billion. That's what I call people power. That's what we need in this country. Boycotts, voting, we have to think smart. And that worked. It's called the most successful boycott they've had. And that's what we can do here.